She was standing on my front porch at 6:30 in the morning, still in her wedding dress, mascara dried in thin lines down her cheeks. She knocked 3 times, then twice more, the way she used to do when she was little and wanted to come in from the cold. I opened the door, and the first thing I thought was how much she looked like her grandfather when he was sorry about something. Let me take you back to how it all started. I am 71 years old, and I have lived in this house in Charlottesville, Virginia for 43 years. I taught 4th grade for 37 of those years, and if you ask me what I am proud of, I will tell you my students first, my garden second, and my sense of direction third. I have never once needed GPS to get to the grocery store, and I consider that a genuine personal achievement. My husband James died 6 years ago. He was a quiet man, steady as river stone, and he left me with a paid-off house, a decent retirement, and 38 years of memories I still reach for in the morning before I am fully awake. We had one son, David, and David had Emma. Emma was born on a Tuesday in late March, 19 years after we had stopped hoping for grandchildren. I drove through a sleet storm to get to that hospital. I held her in the hallway while David cried inside the room, and I remember thinking this small, red-faced child had absolutely no idea what she had just done to all of us. That same afternoon, on the drive home, I stopped at my bank and opened a savings account in her name. I put in $300. Then I kept putting in every single month after that. I never told anyone the exact number in that account. I just watched it grow for 22 years the way you watch a garden, quietly, steadily, with a lot of faith and very little need for applause. That account was my secret project, my private joy. It was always meant to be her start. What I did not know was that someone had been watching that account just as carefully as I had. And not for the same reasons. Emma called me in November with the news about Travis. I heard something in her voice before she said a word, and I already knew. I cried a little after we hung up, then drove to the store and bought the good champagne. I called my friend Ruthie and my friend Linda, and then I sat in my kitchen and felt as full as I had felt in years. The next few months were busy and beautiful. Emma came over twice to look through my old recipe boxes and my grandmother's tablecloths. We talked about flowers and music, and whether a receiving line was old-fashioned or just timeless. She asked my opinion and actually listened to it, which is one of the finest things a young person can do for an older one. I felt useful. I felt like a part of something that mattered. Then Travis's mother arrived in the picture. Diane came from Buckhead, Georgia. She wore linen in November and used the word aesthetic the way some people use the word whether casually, constantly, as though it required no further explanation. I met her at the engagement dinner in January. She was perfectly cordial. She smiled at me and said Emma talks about you constantly in the same tone you would use for it might rain tomorrow. Not unkind. Just surface level. The kind of pleasant that does not actually let anything through. After dinner, while the others were at the dessert table, I overheard Diane telling my daughter-in-law Karen that the venue had very specific energy and that every guest would need to fit the vision. Karen laughed and said absolutely. I filed that away without quite knowing why. Through February and March, Emma's calls got shorter. She was busy, I told myself, and I meant it. I offered to help address envelopes. She said they were doing everything digitally. I offered to bake for the rehearsal dinner. She said Diane had already engaged a caterer. Each answer was gentle and complete. A closed door with a soft click. I told myself I was being too sensitive, which is what I always tell myself when something is actually wrong. The text came on a Thursday morning in April. Gran, I need to tell you something, and I feel terrible about it. Travis's family is so big, and the venue only holds 120 people. We've had to make some really hard choices. We're keeping it to immediate family, only on both sides. I love you more than I can say, and I want to celebrate with you separately. Please don't be upset with me. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that. Then I called Ruthie. Ruthie is the only person I know who will tell me the truth without softening it past the point of usefulness. She said, Margaret, that is not a small wedding. Travis's fraternity brothers alone are 20-some men. She had seen it on the venue's social media page the week before. Tables for 200, she said. At least. I did not say any of that to Emma. I sent back a message that said I understand, sweetheart. I love you. And I meant both of those things completely. I just also started paying closer attention. By May, Emma had posted over 300 photographs related to the wedding on her social media pages. Venue tour and floral mock-ups and engagement photos, and a bachelorette weekend in Savannah with 14 women I had never heard of. The wedding was not small. It was just small for me specifically. I might have let it go at that. I might have told myself the usual story about being old and out of the loop and reading too much into things. I almost did. But then Emma left her phone at my house. She came by on a Sunday afternoon in late May to pick up some vintage linens I had set aside for her, the ones my mother brought up from Pennsylvania in 1962. We had tea for 20 minutes, and she left in a hurry. 20 minutes after that, her phone buzzed on my kitchen counter. I picked it up to put it somewhere safe. The screen lit up with a message preview from Gran. It said, "Did you ask her yet about the account?" I held that phone for a moment. Then I set it face down on the counter. I made myself another cup of tea. I stood at the window and looked at James's rose garden for a little while. Then I picked the phone back up. I am not going to pretend I feel entirely clean about reading those messages. But I read them. The thread went back 3 weeks. Emma and Karen discussing how to bring up the savings account without it seeming like that was the whole reason for calling. How to time the ask so it would not feel transactional. Karen had written, "She'll do it if she thinks you really need it. Just let her feel needed." And then there was a message from Diane further up in the thread. It said, "Once the funds are confirmed, we can finalize the florist contract. Just make sure Grandma doesn't expect a seat at the table. Just make sure Grandma doesn't expect a seat at the table." I set the phone back down very carefully. I looked out the window at James's roses, the deep red ones he had planted along the back fence the summer Emma was born. They were just beginning to open. He always said the roses were better the second year after a hard winter. I sat there for a long time. And then something in me went very still and very clear. I was not angry exactly. Or I was, but the anger was clean and quiet, and it did not need to go anywhere in particular. It just needed to be used properly. What I decided to do with that money would change the morning of Emma's wedding in ways none of us could have predicted. The next morning, I called my bank and made an appointment for Tuesday. I did not rush anything or close anything in a panic. I sat down that evening with a cup of chamomile and thought carefully about what I actually wanted the money to do. James and I had talked for years about starting a small scholarship at Cornerstone Baptist Church, where we had worshiped for 31 years. For young people in the congregation who were headed to college and needed a push in the right direction. We talked about it the way people talk about things they are going to get around to, and then James got sick, and then he was gone, and someday kept getting moved to the back of the shelf. I decided someday was Tuesday. Patricia at the bank was maybe 30 years old. With reading glasses, she kept pushing up into her hair. By the time I finished explaining what I wanted to do and why, she had pushed those glasses up twice. I pretended not to notice both times. I called Reverend Morris on Wednesday morning. He is 73 years old and has seen everything life can do to a person. He still cried when I told him what I was planning. He did not try to hide it. I liked him even more for that. That afternoon, I sat down at the old oak desk James built for me in 1991, the one with a drawer that sticks in humid weather, and I wrote Emma a letter. Not a mean letter. Not a guilt letter. Just the truth, plainly said. I wrote that I had opened that account on the day she was born, driving home through a sleet storm with my heart so full I could barely see the road. I wrote that watching it grow had been one of the quiet pleasures of my life, the way some people collect beautiful things or tend a garden they will never fully see finished. I wrote that the money was always meant to be hers, and it still was, just in a different shape now. 5 students a year, chosen by Reverend Morris, would go to college on scholarships carrying her name. They would know her name. They would carry something forward because of an account I opened 22 years ago on a Tuesday afternoon in a sleet storm. I told her I loved her without conditions. That was the most important line. I meant it to be the one she kept. I sealed the envelope on Thursday morning and mailed it first class. Emma received it on the Saturday before the wedding. My neighbor Linda, who has observed more of my life through her kitchen window than I have ever formally acknowledged, called to tell me she had watched Emma's car sit in my driveway for nearly 40 minutes without moving. I thanked Linda and did not ask follow-up questions. Emma did not call me that Saturday night. I had not expected her to. I went to bed at 10 o'clock, which is what I do, and I slept deeply and without interruption, which is what happens when you have nothing left to arrange. She came to my door at 6:30, the morning of her wedding. I heard the knock 3 times, then twice more, exactly as she had done since she was small, and I knew before I even reached the door. I put on my robe and I went. There she was in that ivory dress, hair half-pinned, bouquet in one hand and my letter in the other, mascara dried in thin lines down her cheeks. She said, "Gran." Just that one word. I said, "Come inside. I'll put the kettle on." We sat at the kitchen table, the way we always had. Emma laid the letter down between us, like something that needed to be settled. She said, "I don't know what I was thinking." I said, "I think you got excited about a beautiful wedding, and you listened to people who had very strong opinions about who should be there. That's not a crime. That's just being 22. She said, "I was actually going to ask you for the money, Gran. I was going to call you and just ask you for it." I said, "I know." She looked up at me. I said, "It doesn't matter now. The money is doing something good. Your grandfather's name is on it. 5 students a year will go to college because I opened an account on a Tuesday afternoon in a sleet storm 22 years ago. I think that is about as good as money can possibly do." Emma put her face in her hands and cried the way you cry when you have been holding something too tightly for too long, and you finally just let go. I let her. I got up and made the tea. After a while, she said, "Will you come today?" "Please." I thought about it. Not for long. I said, "Let me go find something appropriate to wear." I had no idea what Diane was going to say when I walked into that venue on her son's wedding day. But I had a pretty good feeling I was going to enjoy finding out. I wore the navy dress. The one I wore to David's college graduation, which still fits, which I consider one of my most consistent personal achievements. Emma called ahead. By the time I arrived, David was waiting at the entrance with red eyes and his suit jacket slightly askew, which is exactly how David looks when he knows he was wrong and has been standing somewhere waiting to say so. He hugged me and held on. I let him hold on. Diane was standing near the florals when I walked in. She looked at me. Then she looked at Emma. Then she looked back at me. I gave her a very pleasant smile. She gave me one in return. We both understood precisely what that exchange meant, and neither of us needed to say another word about it for the remainder of the day. The ceremony was beautiful. Emma and Travis stood in a wash of afternoon light coming through old church windows, and it turned everything gold. I sat in the third pew and thought about James, who would have started crying before the processional even began. I have never told anyone that because it would have embarrassed him to know I noticed. At the reception, the DJ played something I did not recognize, and Emma pulled me onto the dance floor anyway. I have not danced since James's retirement party in 2003. I discovered that I still knew how. My feet remembered something my brain had quietly been keeping safe. The following Sunday, Reverend Morris announced the scholarship from the pulpit. He spoke about James and about Emma, and about the 5 students who would receive letters in the fall. Afterward, 3 families came to find me in the fellowship hall. They shook my hand and said things I am going to keep entirely for myself. Emma calls every Sunday now. We talk about small things, her new apartment, Travis, the roses out back. Last month she said, "Gran, I still don't fully understand why you didn't just get angry with me." I told her, "Oh, I was angry. I just decided to use it for something better." She laughed at that. James would have laughed at that too. The roses are doing beautifully this summer. James always said they were better the second year after a hard winter. I am starting to think he was talking about more than just the roses. Tell me in the comments, has someone you loved ever misjudged you? And did the 2 of you find your way back to each other? The morning I walked into my own bakery and couldn't find a single recipe I had ever written. I stood in the middle of that kitchen for a very long time without moving. The shelves where my binders had lived for 38 years were completely bare. My son Marcus was on his way in, and I was already sitting at the counter with a cup of cold coffee when he arrived. Let me take you back to how it all started. I am 72 years old, and for most of those years, my life lived inside a little corner bakery in Clover Ridge, Ohio. I started Clover Crumb with my late husband, George, in 1986. We had $400 and a recipe for honey oat bread that George's mother had written on the back of a church bulletin. George framed that bulletin and hung it above the register before we ever opened the doors. We built that place from nothing. Saturday mornings, there were lines around the block. People came from 2 towns over for my blueberry cream cheese Danish, my brown butter pecan rolls, my cardamom apple loaf. People brought their children, and then they brought their grandchildren. Those weren't just recipes. They were living things, built up over decades, adjusted every single season, refined through 10,000 small experiments. When something didn't work, I fixed it. When something worked better than I expected, I wrote down exactly what I had done differently, in the margin, in red ink. When George passed in 2019, I ran the bakery alone for 2 more years. My knees were not cooperating. My back was starting to have opinions about the early morning hours. And my son Marcus came to me with an offer. He sat across from me at my kitchen table and said, "Mom, I want to carry this forward. Exactly the way you and Dad built it. I just want to make sure it's still here in another 20 years. I believed him. I signed the business license over. I handed him the keys. And then I sat in my car in the parking lot of my own bakery for 45 minutes before I was able to drive home. The first sign that something was shifting came quickly, and it was small. Marcus had the sign out front repainted. The original had George's handwriting on it, reproduced by a sign painter named Duffy, who had been our neighbor for 2 decades. The new sign was clean and modern, sans serif, the kind of font you see on a wellness product. Marcus called it refreshed branding. I looked at it one afternoon and chose not to say anything. Then the handwritten chalkboard menu that had hung above the counter since we opened came down. Marcus replaced it with a laminated card in a stand. When I mentioned that people had loved that chalkboard, he said, "Mom, customers trust cleanliness and consistency. It's a whole studied thing in food service now." I let it go. I reminded myself whose bakery it was. I kept coming in twice a week anyway, because stopping completely felt impossible. I would notice if the cinnamon ratio and the morning rolls had drifted and quietly adjust it. I would remind a new hire to rest the dough before shaping. Small things. My fingerprints kept on everything as gently as I could. What I discovered on a Tuesday morning 3 months later changed the entire direction of what came after. I had come in before anyone else arrived. I wanted to leave a note about a pumpkin brown sugar swirl loaf I had been testing at home, a seasonal thing I thought could work for October. I let myself in through the back, turned on the light, and walked toward the shelf where I kept the recipe binders. 12 thick 3-ring binders. 38 years of them. Tabbed sections for bread, pastry, savory, seasonal. Laminated pages. Margins dense with notes in pencil and red ink. George's handwriting on 6 of the oldest ones. From the years he had been working on the rye formulas he never quite got right until 1994. The shelf was empty. Not reorganized. Not moved somewhere else. Empty. I could see the clean outlines in the dust where each binder had sat for years. I opened every cabinet in the kitchen. I checked the back office. I went out the rear door and looked in the dumpster, which had already been picked up for the week. They were gone. I went back inside, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the counter. I did not call Marcus. I waited. He came in at 8. He took one look at my face and said, "Mom." I said, "Where are the recipe binders, Marcus?" He said, "Okay." So, we made a transition. We went with a vendor platform. Everything is standardized now through this system. It's actually better for consistency and for liability and for scaling down the road. I asked him what vendor platform. He took out his phone and showed me an application. A commercial baking program with preloaded industrial formulas. The kind of recipes designed to produce the kind of bread that could exist in any city, in any context, that tastes exactly like nothing in particular. You threw them away. I said, I transitioned us to a better system. He said, Mom, those handwritten binders were a liability. What if there had been a health inspection? What if someone misread a formula? I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about 38 years. I thought about George writing notes in red ink about the rye bread at 11 o'clock at night while I cleaned the kitchen behind him. I picked up my coat. I said, "All right, Marcus." And I left. I did not cry until I got home. And then I cried for a while, which I am not ashamed of. But when I was done, I washed my face and stood in my hallway. And something came back to me from a very long time ago. 20-some years earlier, I had a friend named Loretta who ran a restaurant kitchen 2 towns over. There was a grease fire one night. No one was hurt, but when the smoke cleared, every recipe Loretta had kept in that kitchen was gone. I can still see the look on her face when she realized it. I never forgot that look. After Loretta's fire, I started keeping backups. Not on a computer. This was the early 2000s, and I did not trust a computer with the things that mattered most to me. I wrote the core recipes out again by hand, in composition notebooks with thick, dark covers, and I kept them at home. I did this for years, keeping them current with every major formula. And then, gradually, without marking the moment, I stopped thinking about them. The notebooks moved with me twice, packed in boxes with things I never threw away but rarely opened. I went to the spare bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer of the old secretary desk I had inherited from my mother. And there they were. 7 composition notebooks, a little swollen from the years, covers softened. Every core recipe I had ever built, written in my own hand, dated, annotated, intact. I sat down on the floor of that spare room and held one open in my lap for a long time. Then I called Carol. Carol is 74 and has never in her life let a problem sit unexamined. She was the one who insisted I have an attorney review George's estate paperwork when I nearly signed something I hadn't fully read. She is the kind of friend who tells you the truth, even when it is not comfortable to say. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is how I know she was paying close attention. Then she said, "Ruth, those notebooks never left your house. Those recipes were never part of the business sale. I know a business attorney you should call first thing tomorrow." I called Diane the next morning. She was direct and clear. Recipe ingredient lists, she explained, are generally not protectable on their own. But the specific written text of a recipe, the method and the annotations as I had set them down over decades, could be treated as an original form of expression. And more importantly, nothing I had ever signed had transferred the recipes themselves. I had signed over the business license, the equipment, the commercial lease. The recipes had always been mine personally. There was no written agreement to the contrary. What Diane told me next was something Marcus should have considered before he made his decision. We had a very clear case that what I had in those notebooks was mine, had always been mine, and had never been his to discard. I spent the next 2 weeks in quiet, careful preparation. I photographed every page of every notebook, front and back. I sent complete copies to Diane, and to a cloud storage account that Carol's grandson walked me through setting up on a Sunday afternoon. Diane filed the appropriate documentation and sent me a written summary of what we had established. Then I looked into Ohio's cottage food law. I had been aware of it in a general way, the way you know a road exists without having taken it. The law permits home bakers in Ohio to sell certain foods directly to customers without a commercial license, within a defined annual limit. I had never had reason to use it before. I submitted my registration on a Wednesday. The approval came back in 11 days. Then I called Pat. Pat manages the Saturday Farmers Market in Clover Ridge and has been buying my bread since 2003. I told her I was thinking of setting up a small table as a home baker. She said, "Ruth, I have had at least a dozen regulars in the last 2 months asking me where your recipes went. Please come back to this market." That told me everything I needed to know about how the new vendor system was landing with the people who had been coming to Clover Crumb for 20 years. I started baking again on a Sunday. I opened my kitchen windows. The whole house filled up with a smell I had been missing without fully realizing how much I missed it. Something specific and real and irreplaceable, the exact opposite of interchangeable. I had been at the farmer's market for 3 Saturdays when Marcus came to find me. By that third Saturday, word had moved through Clover Ridge the way word moves in a town that size. A handful of longtime customers had posted online saying the bakery had changed and they couldn't locate certain things anymore. Several of them had apparently figured out where to find the originals. I had a proper line by mid-morning, wrapping loaves and rolling up bags of rolls, and answering questions from people I had not seen since before I handed over the keys. Marcus arrived just after 9 o'clock. I saw him coming across the market from a distance. I finished wrapping pecan rolls for a woman from my church, counted back her change carefully, and thanked her by name. Then I looked at my son. He looked tired in a specific way. He had the expression of a man who had made a decision with great confidence and had since discovered everything that confidence had been covering up. He said, "Mom, can we talk for a minute?" "Of course." I said, "Go ahead." He told me foot traffic at the bakery was down. He said 2 wholesale accounts had not renewed for the new season. He said customers kept requesting items that were no longer on the menu, and the platform formulas were not producing the response he had anticipated. I listened to all of it without interrupting. Then I said, "Marcus, I think the things they're asking about are the ones you transitioned away from." He looked at me the way a grown child looks at a parent when he knows exactly what is being communicated and hasn't yet decided how to receive it. He said, "Do you still have them?" "The originals." I said that I did. He said, "Mom, what if we just brought them back? Put everything back the way it was. You could even come in more if you wanted to. We could make it work together." I let the moment breeze. A woman stepped up to the table, and I wrapped a cardamom apple loaf in brown paper and tucked it into her bag and thanked her. Then I turned back to Marcus. "Marcus," I said, "those recipes were never part of what you acquired from me. I have an attorney who has been very thorough in confirming that. They were always mine personally. What I would like to work out is a formal licensing arrangement so the bakery can use them going forward." He repeated the words slowly. "A licensing arrangement." "A modest one," I said. I have no interest in punishing you or harming what you've built. I want to make sure that what your father and I put 38 years into doesn't get replaced permanently by a template that doesn't know the difference between brown butter and clarified butter. He was quiet. The market moved around us. Then he asked what my terms were. I reached into my tote bag and brought out a folded piece of paper, face down. Diane had prepared it, and I had read it through several times. Take it home, I said. Read it carefully. Call me when you've had time to think it over. Then another customer stepped up to the table, and I smiled, and I got back to work. Marcus signed the agreement 10 days later. The bakery has the right to use my recipes under a modest quarterly licensing arrangement. And there is one clause that is not negotiable and never will be. My name appears on the menu beside every item I created. Ruth Hartley. Not house recipe. Not traditional. My actual name. Brittany, Marcus's wife, called me the morning after he signed. I expected some tension in the call. Instead, she said, the pecan rolls sold out in 90 minutes on the first day back. Marcus got a little emotional about it. Please don't tell him I mentioned that. I told her I wouldn't. And I haven't. The farmer's market table is still going. Twice a month now. Not because I need the income from it, but because I need the reminder that the work I put into those recipes is not behind me. My hands still know exactly what they're doing. Some mornings, that is the most important thing to know. I am not angry at Marcus. I raised a son who wants to build things, and building sometimes means moving too fast and learning costly lessons in front of the people who matter most. I think this was one of those lessons. He calls me twice a week now, which is twice more than he called when everything was going smoothly for him. And I find I appreciate the quality of his voice when it carries a little more care in it. George used to say that a recipe isn't just a list of ingredients. It's the record of every time you got something right. Those records were never going anywhere. I just needed to remember where I had put them. On the first Saturday I went back to the market, I brought the honey oat bread. George's mother's recipe, the one we started with in 1986, the one first written on the back of a church bulletin. I sold every loaf before noon. One older man told me it tasted like a Saturday morning was supposed to taste. Some things don't need to be modernized. They just need to be protected. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone dismiss something you built, only to come back needing exactly what they had thrown away? My son told me I had made myself too central to my own grandchildren's lives. He said it carefully, like someone who had been coached. I said I understood, and I hung up the phone on 6 years of Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, and the little girl who fell asleep on my shoulder every single time. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Ruth. I am 73 years old, and I spent 31 years as a school librarian in Columbus, Ohio. That is a long time to sit quietly and watch people. A long time to learn when someone is telling you the truth and when they are simply managing you. My late husband, Gerald, used to say I was the most dangerous kind of woman. Quiet, observant, patient enough to wait for exactly the right moment. When my son Daniel and his wife Courtney had their first child, my granddaughter Lily, I was 64 and newly retired. Gerald had been gone 2 years by then. The house was quiet in a way I had not yet learned to accept. So when Courtney asked, a little nervously, whether I might be willing to watch Lily a few days a week, I said yes before she had finished her sentence. That was 6 years ago. I watched Lily on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. When her brother Noah came along 2 years later, I watched both of them. 3 days a week, every single week for 6 years. I rearranged my entire life around those 3 days. I scheduled my own appointments on Thursdays, lunches with friends on Tuesdays. I never once mentioned what I quietly moved around or what I gave up, because the truth is, I did not resent a single bit of it. Those children were the center of my week. They were the best part of my retirement. Lily used to fall asleep against my shoulder during story time, her hand still curled around her stuffed rabbit, as if she were holding on even in sleep. Noah called me Rue, because he could not quite manage Ruth when he was 2, and the name stuck the way the best names do. I taught Lily how to make my mother's apple cake, the one with cardamom in it that fills a kitchen with the smell of autumn. I taught Noah how to whistle by pressing his lips just right. I built a proper swing set in my backyard because he loved to swing. I planted a strawberry patch because Lily had declared, with absolute certainty at age 4, that strawberries were the best thing in the entire world. And quietly, every single month, I also saved. I had Gerald's pension and my own retirement, and the discipline of someone who came of age, understanding that you do not spend what you do not have. Every month I set aside a modest sum into 2 savings accounts, one for Lily and one for Noah. I did not tell Daniel. I did not tell Courtney. I thought, someday, at the right moment, I will hand all of this over and say, this is what 6 years of Mondays looked like. This is what a grandmother does. I told only 2 people. My financial advisor, Margaret, who had been managing my money for 19 years. And my oldest friend, Dorothy, a retired attorney who can keep a secret the way a good vault keeps gold. What was in those accounts would surprise everyone who thought they knew me. The first signs of trouble were so quiet, I almost missed them. About 2 years ago, Courtney began making careful little corrections. Not arguments, just observations delivered in a bright, pleasant tone. Oh, we've actually moved away from screen time before noon. Or, Lily is working with someone on her sensory responses, so her diet needs to stay pretty specific. Once, she mentioned that the apple cake I had been baking with Lily since she was 3 was something they were trying to step back from. Refined sugar, she said. A health thing. She smiled when she said it. I adjusted. I smiled and I adjusted every time. I have dealt with difficult people in professional settings for 30 years. I know how to receive a correction without showing what I actually think. But beneath the pleasant surface, something was shifting. And the Sunday in October that I have thought about nearly every day since would make that shift impossible to ignore. Daniel's family came to dinner that evening, as they often did. I made pot roast because it was Noah's favorite, and baked a loaf of bread because the smell of it makes a house feel like home. We were all at the table, and I was telling a silly little story about Noah trying to teach the neighbor's Labrador to sit, imitating the dog's baffled expression, and Lily was laughing so hard she had tears on her cheeks. Noah was giggling with his whole body. Except Courtney. Courtney smiled at exactly the right moment, but her eyes were somewhere else entirely. 2 days later, Daniel called. He sounded tired and careful, the way he used to sound as a teenager when he had broken something valuable and needed to confess. He said Courtney had been thinking. He said she had noticed that the children talked about my house constantly, more than they talked about their own home. He said the attachment felt off balance. And then he said it. "Mom, I think you've made yourself a little too central to their lives." Too central to my own grandchildren. The children who called me Rue. I was quiet for a long moment. I had many things I could have said. I said none of them. I said I understood, and I hung up the phone and sat at my kitchen table for a very long time, looking out at the strawberry patch, which had gone brown and quiet for the winter. What I found in my front hallway drawer 3 weeks later changed everything. I was cleaning out the small desk where I keep birthday cards and old grocery lists and the general accumulation of years. At the very back of the bottom drawer, I found a stack of drawings. Lily and Noah had made them for me over the years, saved one by one without my fully realizing it. Little crayon pictures on construction paper. Hearts and lopsided houses and figures with enormous smiles. Words that were not always perfectly spelled, but that I could read perfectly. I sat down on the hallway floor and held those drawings for a long time. And something settled in me. Not anger exactly. Something quieter than anger. A kind of clarity. These children loved me. I had been real to them, important to them, genuinely part of who they were. And someone was working, carefully and persistently, to make me feel like that love was excessive. An imposition. Something to be managed down. I thought about it for 3 days. I called no one. I made no decisions. I simply let it settle. Then I called Margaret. But before I could act, the final message arrived. And it did not come the way I expected. It was a text from Daniel, sent on a Tuesday morning as if it were pleasant news. They had hired an au pair. A young woman named Celine from Lyon. Full-time, live-in, wonderful. The children's schedule would be perfectly covered. He hoped I understood. He hoped it was not too much of an adjustment. 2 weeks after that, Courtney called. She said they were keeping the children's routine very structured through the end of the school year. She said outside visits would need to be limited for now. She used the word boundaries 4 times in a 4-minute phone call. She sounded perfectly pleasant throughout. I thanked her. I said I hoped Celine was settling in well. I got off the phone, made a cup of tea, and sat by the window for a long while. Then I called Margaret and asked if I could come in on Thursday. What Margaret said, when I finished telling her everything, was simpler than I had expected. And it set everything in motion. Margaret has been my financial advisor for 19 years. She is a small, precise woman who wears sensible dark shoes and gives honest advice even when it is not what you want to hear. I sat across from her desk and told her the whole story. She listened the way very good people listen, without filling the pauses with her own reactions. When I finished, she said, "What do you want to do, Ruth?" I told her. I wanted to redirect the savings I had been building for 6 years. Every dollar in those accounts was mine, earned and saved by me alone. I wanted to move those funds somewhere Daniel and Courtney could not touch, adjust, or redirect. Somewhere that could only be opened by Lily and Noah themselves when they were grown. Margaret picked up her legal pad. I know exactly what you're describing. As she said, and I know exactly who to call. What we built over the next 3 weeks was perfectly legal, entirely my own money, and completely beyond anyone else's reach. Margaret contacted Dorothy. Dorothy drew up the paperwork. We established 2 irrevocable educational trusts, one for each child. The funds would be held until each turned 18, available for educational expenses. The trustees were Margaret and Dorothy. Daniel and Courtney were listed as parties of notification only, meaning they would know the trusts existed. But they had no authority over the funds. Not one decision. Not 1 cent. I signed the documents on a Wednesday afternoon in March. Margaret offered me a glass of water. I said I would rather have coffee. She laughed and said that sounded about right. I want to be clear about something. I did not do this to punish my son. I did not do it out of spite. I did it because I had built something real over 6 quiet years, for 2 children I loved with my whole heart. And I was not going to let it dissolve into a household where I had apparently worn out my welcome. The money was mine. The decision was mine. And those children were going to have it regardless of what the adults around them decided to do. After the paperwork was done, I went home and watered the strawberry patch, which was beginning to show the first thin green of spring. I signed up to volunteer at the public library on Tuesday mornings, which felt like coming home. I had long overdue lunches with Dorothy and my friend Jean. I joined a book club that met on Thursday evenings. I started a watercolor class I had been meaning to try for years. I was not waiting. I was living. 7 months passed. And then the call came that I had known, somewhere quiet in my mind, was coming eventually. It was Daniel. A Wednesday evening in October. His voice had a tightness I had not heard since he was a teenager who had broken something and needed to confess. He said he and Courtney had been working with a financial planner. The planner had flagged something. Educational trusts in the children's names. He asked if I had set something up. I said, "Yes, Daniel. I have been saving for Lily and Noah since the day each of them was born." A long silence. "For how long?" he asked. 6 years. I said. Another silence. A different kind. "How much?" he asked. I told him. I won't share the number here, but it was more than he had imagined. I could tell by the way the silence changed. It became something heavier. He was quiet long enough that I thought the line had dropped. Then something broke open in his voice. Not dramatically. Just a small fracture, the kind you hear in someone who has been holding something tightly for too long. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I think we handled things very badly. I let Courtney pull back from you, and I went along because it was easier than having a hard conversation. That was wrong. I'm sorry." I had waited a long time for those words. I let them settle completely before I responded. Then I said, "Daniel, I love you. I love those children more than I know how to say. But I am their grandmother. Not a service you cancel when you found something more convenient. Not a resource you phase out when the season changes. I showed up for 6 years. I rearranged my entire life for 6 years. I will not be thanked for that with silence. I need you to understand that." He said he understood. He said Courtney wanted to apologize in person. I said she was welcome at my kitchen table whenever she was ready. What Courtney said when she sat down across from me was not what I had expected. And it changed something. She came on a Saturday morning without Daniel. I made good coffee and put out the cups I use when I want someone to feel they are being taken seriously. She sat down and she talked for a long time. She said she had not anticipated how completely the children would love my house, my routines, the version of themselves they seemed to become when they were with me. She said she had felt, watching Lily and Noah run to my door, that she was not enough. She knew it was not rational. But in the middle of it, she had not been able to separate my love from her own sense of failure. And so she had chipped away at my presence the only way she knew how, without ever being honest about why, even with herself. I listened to all of it without interrupting. Then I said, "Courtney, I never came into this family to replace you. I came to love those children alongside you, not instead of you. Those are entirely different things." I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, "My love for those children is not a threat to you. But you have to stop treating it like one." She was pressing her lips together, trying not to cry. I pushed her coffee cup closer, and she wrapped both hands around it. We sat at that table for 2 hours. We said real things to each other, the kind that take a while to come out. By the end, something had shifted between us. Not fixed exactly, but open, which is the only place you can start from. That was 4 months ago. Last Saturday, Lily and Noah came to my house for the afternoon. Lily is 9 now and has very firm opinions about books and sandwiches and the correct way to fold a napkin, which I find entirely delightful. Noah ran straight to the backyard before he had even taken off his jacket. I followed him out. He was crouching over the strawberry patch, which had wintered over and was already sending up small green shoots in the first real warmth of spring. He stood slowly, put his small hands on his hips in the serious way he has had since he was 4 years old. And he said, "Rue, I think they're going to be really good this year." I stood behind him, and I felt all of it at once. Every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, the drawings in the hallway drawer, the legal pad on Margaret's desk, Dorothy's signature on a document that meant those children would be taken care of no matter what the adults in their lives decided to do. "I think you're right, babies," I said. "I think they're going to be just fine." Not every story ends in a grand confrontation. Sometimes justice is quieter than that. Sometimes it lives in a trust document no one knew about, in a child's memory, in a grandmother who showed up 3 days a week for 6 years and never once needed to be told she mattered. I have lived long enough to know that the people who truly love you do find their way back. They just sometimes need to learn, first, exactly what they had been taking for granted. And the children were always going to be all right. I made sure of that on a Wednesday afternoon in March, with a good cup of coffee and a legal pad and 2 women who knew exactly what they were doing. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been quietly pushed aside by the people you gave everything to and found a way to come back with your dignity and your love still intact? I would love to know that I am not the only one.